This is going to be a long one, folks. I'm just warning you now.
Fasten your seatbelt.
So, the YouTube channel Normal Boots, by the way, highly recommend that you subscribe to them. They have very good quality, entertaining content. One of the shows that they do, and it's probably the one that they do the most content on, is a show called Madness, where they take I want to say about 12 different things from a particular category, and they do like a tournament bracket deciding which one is the best. And the first one that they did for season 1 was what's the best Nintendo 64 games. And they ran the gamut, and of course the final bracket turned out to be The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time versus Super Mario 64.
You could have just cut straight to that at the beginning. Right? Like, you're saying they did separate videos debating other games?
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah. Cut out everything right at the beginning.
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, they did cover... They covered a lot that I wouldn't consider in my top 12, but... Like, sidebar, I don't understand all the love for Banjo-Kazooie. I really don't. Like, I understand people grew up with... Like, that is a game I think that is purely nostalgic driven. Like, you're 5 years old, it's your first platformer, I get it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. So, the conclusion they came to was Super Mario 64 being the better Nintendo 64 game. I respectfully disagree. And I also think that if you go and watch the video, it's the season 1 finale for Madness on Normal Boots, and this had Gerard the Completionist, Pro Jared, Peanut Butter Gamer, Shane from Did You Know Gaming, and then Forrest Lee, I think, was like the moderator, and it wasn't even close. Like, they unanimously voted for Super Mario 64. And if you watch the video, they barely even talk about Zelda. They basically just talk about how, like, oh, well, Super Mario 64, like, it's arguable that they haven't made a better Super Mario game and all this stuff. And
I would say that's true.
well, but you could
say the same thing about Zelda.
Same thing
I would
about
say the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's debatable because Breath of the Wild is so good. But yeah, to me, it's like, yeah, sure. When you talk about one game so much more than the other one, of course, that's the one that you're going to favor when it comes to the time to vote. So, wanted to throw my own winged cap /
Steven enters the ring.
My green winged cap to show that I love both games. By the way, before I get into this, like I respect them both immensely. I played them. I'm old enough to have played them when they first came out too, so I can give you a perspective where I didn't like discover them years later. I didn't grow up with one or the other. I grew up playing both. I actually didn't even own a Nintendo 64 until the GameCube years, and I never owned Super Mario 64 until I had the DS version, which I like a lot.
The little menu where you can play around with the faces.
Yeah, I also dislike. I just like the
I messed around with
mini games. Are fun too. A lot of fun. But we're just talking about. We're just going to keep it simple. 64 version to 64 version, because both games have been ported to the DS. Just one.
When I start talking about it, it's going to be the opposite. Just disclaimer: it's going to be DS version.
Yeah. Well, when it comes
to also fair.
When it comes to Ocarina of Time, well. Not really, because the 64 version was on the original DS. Ocarina of Time is on the 3DS and looks a lot better.
Well, I don't care about graphics.
I don't care about...
I mean, they're both going to have crappy graphics. It's just the way it is.
So, speaking of graphics, that is my first point that I would like to bring up. So the visuals. Super Mario 64 was, of course, the first 3D game developed by Nintendo. You could say Star Fox, but you can't say Star Fox because Star Fox technically wasn't developed by Nintendo. It was developed by Argonaut Software over in the UK. So, wasn't Star Fox. Super Mario 64, first Nintendo 3D developed game. Let's get down to... So, before I get into my main points, I will say that Super Mario 64, it runs better I believe it runs at a very smooth, steady 30 frames per second, I want to say, but that was perfect for that era of gaming. If you hit 30 frames per second, that was like you weren't going to go any higher. Few games could hit 60. I think Bloody Roar, the fighting games on PS1 could do it, but not many others. So runs at 30 frames per second, whereas Ocarina of Time, I can never tell what the frame rate is. It's somewhere around between 20 and 25. It looks like a movie. A movie runs at 24 frames per second, and it has that kind of a frame rate to it. Are you trying to look it up now? What the official frame rate is? Do some fact checking there. It does have a little bit of slowdown in it, but not much. But it does still run at a steady frame rate. It's just lower than 30 like Super Mario 64. So, that is where Mario's advantage ends, though, when it comes to visuals. Simply put, the character models look better on all of them. Bowser looks terrible in Super Mario 64. His head,
that's true.
His head is far too big for his body. His hair is like, he looks like a giant version of Bowser Jr. basically.
No, if you remember, a while back earlier this year, I played it on 64 for the first time.
Oh yeah, and
I was like, who is this guy?
And that's Bowser.
Yeah, no, that was weird.
Yeah. And I believe there's a channel called A Plus Start that does a lot of glitch. I think he does a show called Son of a Glitch, but he.
I see what you did there.
I see what you did there. But he also has one show called Low Poly where he dissects the 3D models of characters in different games. I think he's done like Sonic, Crash, Mario. And the one for 64 is interesting because it just seems like it doesn't follow a lot of the rules of 3D modeling. Like it's just kind of a bunch of different pieces thrown together. And I think it shows. Like Mario doesn't look the greatest.
I will say Link looks better in 64 version than Mario does.
He sure does. There's hardly any textures used on Mario. It's basically like, his
bunch of blobs.
His pants are just going to be blue polygons. Yeah. His shoes are brown polygons. There's actual texture work done on Link, like on his clothes and things like that. And honestly, yeah, he does have a very sharp nose. Link. I would say that's the worst part of it. It looks like that's actually deadlier than the Master Sword. One might want to say.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah,
it's dangerous to go alone. Take your nose with you.
Take this false nose. But so character models, I would say, look better.
Right.
The environments look better. This drove me mad when I was watching Madness. They did this. They were talking. No one ever brought up the fact that every single environment that is outside, except maybe a few areas, most of the environments that are outside are just floating in space.
In Mario?
Yes. Like if you jump into the moat.
Yeah, the Goomba one with all the mushrooms and
like all of them.
Floating.
They're basically all just floating in space. Even the first area you're in, the outside of Peach's castle, you go into the moat and it looks like you could swim and it's just an invisible wall where water ends.
Yeah.
And it looks terrible. Mm-hmm. It has always looked dumb to me.
And then you have like the ice cave in Ocarina of Time. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
And like the water temple.
Everywhere,
like so pretty.
Everywhere you go in Ocarina of Time, the haunted wasteland, that looks great still.
Yeah.
That actually looks like sand, not just you want to compare apples to apples. Look at the desert level from Mario. It doesn't look anywhere near as good as the Gerudo Desert. So environmentally, it stands up. There are mountains or walls everywhere, so that you can't see
it's not
like
just void in the background, which is kind of a cop out.
Right. With that, Mario does a lot.
Right.
And I think that's what helps it run at the higher frame rate.
I mean, it's also just the style of the game. So I mean, like no fault, but it just takes more work for what Ocarina of Time did.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and not to mention Hyrule Field is huge. Like, there's nothing comparable in Mario. So, that's what I would say about the visuals. Sound. It's hard for me to really go into, like, oh, well, what had better music?
Because it's really just opinion.
That is strictly subjective. For the longest time, and I still hold this, Ocarina of Time, the original release, did not have any hint of the original Legend of Zelda theme. They did fix that in the 3DS version, like during the credits. They actually during that it's like an orchestrated version of or an orchestrated piece where they actually do the original, and I love that they did that. But in the original game, it's nowhere to be found. I could knock that against Ocarina of Time, but that would be like saying, well, Super Mario 64 doesn't have the original Super Mario Brothers theme in it. Even though that's classic, to me, that's kind of a moot point because neither of them have it. I do think that the 64 theme for Mario is very classic and iconic, but so is Ocarina of Time's theme. It's no original Zelda theme, but it's still good. So I wouldn't compare the music. I wouldn't even really compare the sound effects, even though, like, because the sound effects for both games are stellar. They fit both of the styles of the game. You've got
I just had a thought. Which character makes the more annoying noises? You have Kid Link who's like all the time, and then you have Mario who's like Yahoo! They're both so annoying.
Well, yeah. And then
at least Link grows up and he's not annoying.
And then, well, if Nintendo didn't want to, they didn't do any favors when they have him. Mario will fall asleep if you leave the control on
with the bubble thing,
and he starts dreaming and he starts singing like lasagna, spaghetti, meatball. It's both, like, wow.
But like the thing is, like,
racist much?
Both of their they must have gotten. Did they get rid of that in the DS version? I don't remember it.
I don't think so.
No, but both their like just normal noises are so annoying, like for punching and like attacking and jumping and stuff.
But that's where that became commonplace. Like, oh, we can do voices in video game. Well, let's do it. I will say that the voice samples used in Zelda, number one, there's more characters that actually talk.
Right.
Like the Goron, they're going doing like, ooh. Yeah. I don't know, I just love that sound. And then, of course, King Zora when he's moving over. Oi.
Yeah.
Oi.
Yeah. They're like really slowly.
and you cannot skip that.
Yeah, I was so annoyed. I was like, dude. Move.
Yeah, more characters have voices. The voice quality is high too. With Mario, you can hear a little bit of compression on it, but and now you're going off the DS version. The sound of the DS version is not as good as the 64 version.
In Mario?
Yeah, they compressed it more for the DS version. That didn't happen with Ocarina of Time because the 3DS cards could hold more memory, but it was, when you're comparing 64 to 64 version, Ocarina of Time just sounds much more clear and crisp when it came to the voice sample. So I would say it narrowly sounds better. Moving on to controls. So the controls have to deal with
the spike coming down in the middle of your controller.
Yes, the infamous Nintendo 64 triple pronged controller.
So you can eat dinner after you play video games.
They both use the overused control scheme of you hold the center prong with your left hand and the right prong with your right hand.
Is that how you're supposed to do it?
Yeah.
I was just holding the right prong on my right hand
and reaching all the way over to get to the joystick.
That's why it was so frustrating.
Yeah. You're supposed to hold that center prong.
Well, what's the point in the one on the left?
So some games you do.
If it doesn't use the stuff in the middle?
Yeah, if you use the control pad. That's what that's for.
That makes so much more sense now. Because
there's like three different ways to hold
my hands are big, so it wasn't but it was just kind of like, this is weird.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
So both games have that hurdle to overcome.
And I'm not familiar with it, so.
Yeah. But here's what I would say. I would say that it all boils down to, because these were both early 3D games, 3D games had the early ones had a lot of trouble figuring out what to do with the camera. How much control do you give to the player? Do you give any control to the player about the camera? Yeah. I mean, Resident Evil dealt with the camera by not giving you any camera control and having just static camera angles from where you would play the game from. Other games, later games, I feel like Spyro the Dragon, probably Banjo-Kazooie, I'll give it a little bit of credit, had a camera that no one complains about. Super Mario 64 does this weird thing where they give you the C buttons. You have the four C buttons, up, down, left, right. Left and right would swing it left or swing it right. The up C would go into not a first person mode, but it would like stick the camera right behind Mario. And down C would actually pull the camera back and give you like a more zoomed out version of what you were seeing. But
yeah.
What always bothered me in Mario is, let's say I'm trying to rotate the camera. There'd be some times where it would just get stuck. It wouldn't go any further, and it would do the little burp, burp.
Yeah.
Burp, burp. Just so you know, you can't rotate the camera anymore.
Yeah,
but
it really
never
annoying.
Made any sense, because normally that means like the camera's about to go into a wall.
Yeah, that's true.
But it wasn't. Like it's so weird. Like you can only rotate the camera so much.
And then you have Ocarina of Time where you can just do first person.
Oh goodness.
Which is so nice for looking around.
Up C would go into a first person mode. And there wasn't an actual way to rotate the camera, but you didn't need it. Like, for some reason, the camera in that game just works. When you went into Z targeting, it would give you the perfect angle to see both yourself and your enemy. And and all it would really do is, you want to see what's in front of Link? Tap Z. And it recenters the camera around him. And that's all you need to do in the game.
Yeah.
It's so simple, it's scary, like how well the camera works in Ocarina of Time. They didn't even... Here's the crazy thing. Twilight Princess, which is very much a spiritual successor to Ocarina of Time, they give you camera control with the C-Stick if you're playing the GameCube version, or at least using the GameCube controller, but you don't really need it. You can basically use the L trigger just like the Z trigger and center the camera behind you, and it works just fine doing that. I believe it's even in Breath of the Wild, now that I think about it. You just tap L and it centers behind Link.
Am I the only one who feels like they should have like put an option in Ocarina of Time where you can like do first person the whole time?
They almost did.
Yeah, they should have. Like an option, not keep it that way.
Right. But I do love that the weapons that require
the hook shot and the
bow and arrow and the slingshot.
The boomerang. Yeah.
Well, the boomerang...
Well, no, that's like a
boomerang is weird. It kind of... Yeah, it's not...
It's really weird to aim. You have to like put it up like where the boomerang's like covering it up.
I don't know exactly why they didn't just go first person with that. Maybe it's because he's holding it behind his head.
And they want you to see it.
Because if he's like doing it like this and then like goes like that, but that would be better.
I mean,
I would think. Anyway, the camera work is just so done much better in Ocarina of Time. It's just weird that the camera doesn't work exactly the way you want to in Mario.
And let's go ahead and get this one out of the way. Not sure if you had it in there or not, but the storyline is way better, way more interesting. I think it's objectively better. Bowser took Peach.
You can say that
you
about
get stars so you can get her back.
Yeah, but you say that about any Mario/Zelda game.
Yeah, but is that not a good point?
Well, it's kind of like comparing a Saturday morning cartoon to like a young adult novel.
But we're comparing the two games to begin with, so why should that not be mentioned? I don't know.
Well, I kind of feel like the same argument for the soundtrack. Like the soundtracks are, they're for that specific game, and that game is for a specific audience. Like Zelda is for slightly older gamers anyway. But I mean, I'll say that the story of Zelda has always been much more interesting than Mario.
I don't know. That's why I feel like this whole conversation just kind of boils down to not one of them being better, but it really just comes down to what people like, what you like more.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that you can actually look at both of them and say, this one's better than this.
Well, you can when you break it down, like basically we're breaking it down into kind of your standard, how do you judge a video game by? Does it look good? Does it sound good? Does it play well? That sort of thing.
And then the trouble comes when you see, like, certain people don't care about certain things as much, which is what I'm hearing you say, like, about, the storyline and the soundtrack, like, and even other stuff, like...
Because like I do feel that still is subjective.
Yeah.
Like, if no one's saying, like, the soundtrack is bad or the story is bad. If it were bad, then, yeah, we would kind of count it. Or one was like, oh, this one's, like, leagues above the other one.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha.
But I do want to touch on the last thing I want to talk about for these two games is the gameplay. And I think that breaks down into, since you're talking about the 64, that generation was all about translating 2D games into 3D. So both of these games, of course, had multiple titles before only in 2D, and these were the 3D premiere titles for both of these games that still hold up tremendously well. So which game did it better? Of course, you probably already know my answer. And
drum roll, please. No. It's Legend of Zelda for Steven.
So here's, I actually kind of wrote a long paragraph on this.
It's an article.
My thoughts on it. So I'm just going to actually read it. I think it speaks volumes that Zelda was able to make an incredible game, was able to take an incredible game and stick to the formula established in previous games. Super Mario 64 decides to reinvent the wheel, and while it was and is an incredible 3D platforming experience, so many things were lost in translation. No one at Normal Boots pointed this out. 3 power-ups total in the entire game. The best one, obviously, was the wing cap, and brought the best flying experience to any Mario game, period. The other 2 are such a disappointment. The metal cap is simply invincibility while being able to sink in water, and the invisibility cap only lets you pass through certain walls. Boring.
My guy. Did you just disrespect the metal cap like that?
Yeah.
That was like my favorite.
Okay, I like the music that it changed to.
Yeah. Dude, I love that one.
But honestly, it's just a replacement for the star. You're invincible.
But you sink.
And you sink.
And there's like special occasions for it where you need to go underwater and you like can just beat the crap out of everybody. And it was cooler when you were Wario, I'll give you that. I don't know how it's I don't know, it just looked cooler as Wario. I don't know, that was like my favorite. The flying one was really frustrating me. I hated it.
I love the flying in that game. To me, like that, what I would do is I would go over to my neighbor's house who had a Nintendo 64 and I owned a PlayStation. If none of us were like, I want to play this game, I would just be like, mind if I play Super Mario 64? And he said, yeah, sure.
And you'd go to that level where you just look up and you just fly around.
Not that one. I'd actually go to the first one, Bomb Battlefield.
Okay, yeah.
And I would get to the point where you unlocked the wing caps in all the levels, get the wing cap and just shoot out of the cannons and fly around. It was a lot.
I guess what I'm thinking of is the one where you look up there and it's basically just all air and you gotta get all the coins. That one was just so frustrating to me.
That one,
but it is fun to shoot out of the cannon and just
the whole you go down and you're gaining speed and then you go right back up and you got a little jet trail behind you. That for some, I think in Normal Boots Madness they actually said that the flying wasn't that great, and I was thinking like, what are you talking about? Like that's. To me,
yeah, it was fun actually. On second thought,
I think it is still, and it's still good. Maybe it could be more precise if they were to remake Super Mario 64. But other than that, it's still just fine the way it was.
Yeah.
And that's so pretty much. Yeah, I kind of bashed Mario 64 but there's no Fire Flower. There's no.
That's odd.
Right, there's no Yoshi. Yoshi makes a cameo, but that's it unless you're playing the DS version. And the original Nintendo 64 version, he's up on the...
No, you're right, that's it. In the DS version.
What?
No, wait, you can be him.
Yeah, that's right. You actually start as Yoshi.
It's so odd.
Yeah, they changed a lot.
You have to unlock Mario. I forgot about that.
Yeah, you got to find him.
That's cool. I like that, actually.
Yeah, I like the DS version better. Like
me too, probably. I mean, that's all I've played. So.
But Zelda, I mean, people are just like, oh, it just got all of its ideas from A Link to the Past, and that's a bad thing. Like, I love the structure of You clear the first 3 dungeons. Some massive change happens. You get the Master Sword, and you have access to a whole new world that mirrors the world you already know, but it's different.
And you have to get all this stuff to do all these things, like the tunics and the the little items and stuff. Yeah.
And Mario just goes in a completely different direction. And it did invent the collectathon with collecting all the different stars.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, like I do feel that in that process, like, why didn't you have a Fire Flower cap? Well, where's Fire Mario? Where is,
or the one where he, what did they have at that point in existence?
Well,
there was the raccoon.
Mario 3, that had a bunch of them. You had a frog suit.
The raccoon should have been in it.
And
frog suit? What?
Yeah, you had a frog suit.
What's the frog suit do?
You could swim without just tapping A. You would just like press a direction and he would go that direction.
Does he eat stuff like Yoshi does and spit it out?
No.
Oh, that would have been dope.
It is awkward
a missed
to use it on land, though. But I think that was the point.
That's such a missed opportunity.
There was a Hammer Brothers suit where where if you ducked, you were fireproof and you could throw hammers.
I need to play this.
Mario 3?
Yeah.
It's
really
good.
Do I not? I do, right?
You do, yeah.
I need to play that. Also, while we're talking about gameplay, I would say that the combat system on Ocarina of Time is like way better, way more fun, objectively more fun.
Yeah, but Mario 64 is weird because like it's really one of the. I can only think of 2 games where Mario can punch, and that is Mario 64 and Mario RPG, which came out like at about the same time as 64, but just for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I remember as a kid playing 64 being so weirded out, like Mario
why is
punches
he
and kicks, he doesn't just jump on their heads. But it's a little awkward at times. Like you gotta like position. Like I'm not gonna lie, like it's not as smooth like Mario 64, like with the combat. Like you go up to them and you kind of have to like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but you have to like
you don't know exactly
right
how close you are either.
Yeah, and you got, and like sometimes I'll end up just running into them and getting hurt.
Yeah,
it's like no, like and like with Ocarina of Time, dude, like the dodging and like to jump into the side while you're locked onto the guy and like you're
backflipping.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I would backflip off stuff just for fun, like because it was just like when I would respawn like back in my bedroom in like Link's bedroom, I would like back out of it and then just like backflip off of his like porch onto the ground.
I think everyone does that because I've done it too.
Yeah.
Let me backflip off this ladder. It's really cool. Yeah. The game just. To me, there's no comparison between the two. Super Mario 64, it's fun. I love it for what it does. But, I mean, Ocarina of Time is like the definitive Zelda experience. Like, if you're going to start with Zelda, you start with Ocarina of Time. Super Mario 64, you could... Is it the best 3D Mario? I can't really say. I mean, a lot of people like Galaxy. A lot of people now like Odyssey.
Well, there's also 3D World, but I don't know if that compares.
A lot of people didn't like 3D World, and some people don't count it as a 3D Mario, believe it or not.
It's called 3D World.
I know, but since I think because it's not a collectathon, they don't consider that. Like all the other 3D Marios are collectathons except for 3D World and 3D Land. 3D Land are just get to the end of the level.
Is that what I never heard that before? A collectathon. That's what they call it when you gotta like just get a crap ton of stuff to
progress. Yeah, collectathon.
The more you know.
So those are my thoughts. That is my opinion as I've addressed to it, and I don't think it would have. The thing that bothered me the most about it was I watched the entire season, and it just seemed like all season the sentiment towards Ocarina of Time was, okay, this game always gets number 1 atop everyone's list, not even among N64 games. It's at the top of people's like top 10 games of all time, and it's always in like the top 3, and we're going to make sure it doesn't do that
just because maybe they don't want to be
predictable. To be contrarian, again. Like, especially Gerard, the completionist, like he argued against Ocarina of Time, I think, more than anyone else there. So watch the show, though. You know, let us know come back here. Let us know if you agree with my opinion, Nathan's opinion.
You've been. I came into it like thinking Mario is better, and I still think I I still think I might enjoy it better just because of the game style, the style I like more.
And here's the deal: you can enjoy a game more than another game, but which one is objectively better? That can be different from what you enjoy.
I don't know. That's the
more
thing.
Or less.
To me, it boils down to what kind of game do you like more? Like, do you like the adventure, like complicated, like puzzle solving game, or do you like more straightforward, like simplistic? I don't know, but like. Yeah, I don't know, but you've been like, the more you like talk about Ocarina of Time, the more I'm like, yeah, that is better. Yeah, that part of it is better. Yeah, you're right. That
and I feel like I've given Super Mario 64 a pretty fair assessment too.
Now,
like I'm not just completely bashing it.
Yeah, and here's something I wanted to say, like, that's more impressive that Super Mario 64 did, maybe, is when you look at the kind of the hub and like where the game takes place. In Zelda, right, you got this whole big world.
Right.
Which is impressive in its own right, of just because of how big it is. And then you look at Mario, and it all takes place inside one castle.
Which they almost did for Ocarina of Time. They almost made it very similar to Super Mario 64, where you were trapped in Ganon's tower, and you
that would have been a lot less cool. But.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't.
But
do
my
that.
point is, it's kind of impressive how much Mario was able to do with that. Like, I don't know, to me, like, I think back on, like, exploring that castle, it felt so big.
And also...
And it's just one castle, like, the cavern, like, underneath, you know, all the tunnels.
Right.
And, like, I don't know. It's just, like, it has such, like, a grand feeling to it, just, like, that one castle.
But in reality, there's only, like... there are not very many levels in the game. I think there's, like, maybe somewhere around 10 levels, if you count the hub world.
Wait, in Mario?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, there's
like paintings you jump into.
Like not paintings, but just levels, worlds. Maybe it's 16.
There's a lot more
maybe
than
it's 16.
Yeah, I would say closer to 20. Yeah, 10.
But like, I'm not counting the secret slide. Like that's part of the castle.
Yeah, no,
and
no, or paintings you jump in though, because like there's the
ones
at
and
the
there's like 7 or 8
there's the spiral
stars
you go to, and
get.
There's more,
right?
And then there's another one where there's the clock stuff, and then there's the final one. Yeah, I'd say close to like 16. More closer to 16.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, like, you know, you expect a giant world like in Zelda to be like really cool and like filled with all this stuff. Whereas if you look at Mario and you see just like this castle, it's like, well, that's kind of boring. The game takes place inside this, but like just the feeling they give it, where it just feels so vast.
Right.
It's really charming, kind of in its own right. So I don't know. That's just one thing I thought of.
Yeah. And then, you know, I can't really... I did make a note about the texture work, how, in general, the textures just look better in Zelda.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, well, it did come out 2 years afterwards.
Also, just style was different. Like, Mario was meant to look more Mario...
cartoony.
Simplistic, yeah.
Mario's always a cartoonish type style. So, yeah, you've got that to consider, too. So, anyway... We've gone on long
you guys
enough.
can just go in the comments and just
hash it
fight
out
each
yourselves.
Other. Yeah.
Which is the better game?